Okay, so the thing I want to say about is that fair enough, that I think that the powers that be in the world are smart enough to know that people will be pushed to a point of austerity in society where people will feel forced to have a rebellion. And that's no great thinking on my behalf. You've got Russell Brand out there telling everybody they need to have a rebellion, and you've got the anti-fracking people, and you've got these free man people and British Constitution people and Magna Carta worshipping people out there. And so, because it's the Magna Carta 800th anniversary next year, Magna Carta was signed in a few places according to history, but one of those places is at Runnymede, which is in Windsor, which is not so far from the Queen's residence. It's just off the River Thames. So a concept that I'm saying I can notice, I'm not saying it's guaranteed true, and I'm not saying it's anyone's fault, but I am saying I've noticed this pattern. And the pattern is Jesuits, or the bankers, or the Pope, or the people behind the scenes, or the Wizard of Oz, or whoever it is, the devil himself. Whoever it is anyone wants to blame for being behind this thing, the thing I'm seeing is people being pushed to the point of rebellion. A popular rebellion, popular protest being presented. Occupy St. Paul's was a popular protest that was presented. It was backed by the media. The media gave it loads of coverage. It gathered loads of people together, it gathered loads of information about people. From my point of view, it was like an experiment. It's like the Big Brother house. It's like doing the Big Brother house experiment with a load of volunteers from the internet. It's like a role-playing game that people invented that's nothing to do with politics. And you come up with the idea of an alternative world, and you say to people, make your avatar, be a character in this play. It was a bit like that at Occupy. And it's a bit like that with any protesty thing. But these modern protests, this element of it seems really strong because the internet is a way of being able to watch how big an idea is growing, being able to shape ideas, being able to canalize rivers of ideas. So again, what I'm saying is, if the powers that be that are behind government and state and religion and money, if the powers that be are grooming us, the public, towards a revolution, like has been done in so many countries so far, but if that idea is being played out here in Britain as well, then fracking is the thing that would bring people out onto the streets. Fracking is the thing that would make people camp outside a frack site and run a campaign. So along with UK Uncut and trade union movements and whatever else putting on popular protests in London, since the protest march against the invasion of Iraq, where 2 million people gathered out in the streets in London, since then nobody's believed that protest will actually change anything. And 2 million people have never come out in the streets again since. What I see peculiar about fracking with relation to Occupy is Occupy attempted to set up camps in all major cities around the world. Wanted to have camps everywhere, and those camps were all united by the same governing system. There was a government of Occupy. And the idea of Occupy was a government, a mind control. with fracking, if it's like a game of chess, that the board is laid out according to the devil's directions. The bad guys are granting the license to the fracking companies that make it legal for the fracking companies to do fracking. And if the legislators pass laws that mean it's made clear that these companies can drill underneath anyone's land if they want to, then those laws will get passed. And the government granting the license means that the government is making something that's unlawful, the license makes it legal. It's a permission. So with the template as how things are developing with the fracking, it means that anywhere the government grants the license to the private company to do its profit-based work, there'll be an anti-frack camp at that fracking site. So in essence, the powers that be can choose where each of these little Civil War front, Civil War camps is going to be. And then they just have to watch how the camp develops and have a few people on the inside to keep an eye on things and to lead it in a certain direction. And to my mind, it's all limited and it's all been led off on a tangent. So at Barton Moss, it's all become about the police and the TAU and the GIMPs. And there's not much talk about law at all, but there's loads of talk about police and loads of accusations against police. And loads of people claiming that they should be able to use the law to be able to hold the police responsible for what the fracking companies are doing. And to my mind, that shows a great lack of understanding of the law and how the law works. That's the sheep's wool pulled over your eyes. In the legal system, money is God and property is God. In the legal system, Great Britain is a legal entity. It's a person. The law of the land. We just talk about the Magna Carta anniversary. There is an idea that in the Magna Carta it says you can have a lawful rebellion if the Queen and country are against the will of the people. And it started to pop up in some of the anti-frack sites about this lawful rebellion idea. And I'm just commenting that it doesn't go far enough back in law. It's a good thing in itself, and it'll be a great thing for people to find out about the Magna Carta and find out what was written in it and find out what the history of it all is, if they want to, if they're interested. But of itself, it's not an answer that's deep enough to solve the world's problems, and solving the world's problems is what my imagination strives towards. So with the fracking sites, where the license is granted is where there will be a camp. At that camp there will be a clash between the civilians and the police because of what the private interests are doing on private property. People don't own their land. The land is owned by the Crown. The land is owned by the nation of each of the lands. And they all pay tribute to the Crown and the Pope in the legal system, as far as my understanding goes anyway. I wouldn't mind comments if anyone understands it differently or better. But like I say, Servant King playlist, a man called Marcus, here in my playlist on this YouTube account, he describes it better than I've come across from anyone else. When it comes to Magna Carta, it's about 15 months until the anniversary at Runnymede. And I imagine that we're all going to be guided Occupy style to participate in some kind of an encampment at Runnymede, in which there may well be clashes with the riot police again and stuff. Because what would be being challenged is the Queen's right to rule, or the government's right to rule, or the dissolving of Parliament. And I would imagine that these things do need to happen, and happen in the way that would work for everybody all around, and a fair system come into being in its place. And if you watch Marcus's videos, his videos come to the same sort of conclusion, that the solution has been there all along, it's just people didn't want to do it. Or people couldn't see the solution because they couldn't even see the problem, or whatever. But the idea that there's a destined time at the end of time where all this stuff is finally one way or the other. And in that linear view of time, most people are starting to believe the unconscious idea that humanity is just a bacteria or a parasite and the world would be better off without us, or that the world is destroyed as many times before and it's no harm if it does again, or that people don't like living and they don't mind dying, or whatever it is. But there's the nihilist end of time, and then there's a visionary end of time that has a faith in life itself. So the nihilist view believes that life will end, and the visionary view believes that life is eternal. And religions have made the whole issue muddy by sowing a deliberate confusion, which could be traced back to this devil antichrist creature idea, story character. So I'm not attempting to make big statements about any of that religious faith stuff. What I am trying to say is that there's an alternative that I see in vision, and that alternative is really simple. It's an alternative to the Occupy thing and the anti-fracking thing. It's an alternative to the Magna Carta thing. What I'm suggesting is that there's sacred sites in every area. What I'm suggesting is that our country is being attacked, the land is being attacked, nature itself is being attacked, God's creation is being attacked. And I'm saying the mind behind that is what we could call the devil in language. Or materialism, or nihilism, or any other words. It doesn't matter about the words, we can see what's happening or we can't. So I'm suggesting that there are sacred sites all over the place, in Britain and Ireland, and in every country there are sacred little places where nature is very strong. And them's are nice little places for making camps. They're not necessarily near main roads, they are near a nice little spring. You can light a little fire there, and not necessarily attract any trouble from anyone. So you and some of your mates that are sound heads that would like to live in a sacred manner and recognise that the compartmentalisation of electromagnetic flats isn't really helping them in that score. So people can start living together in a camp, even if it's only for a few hours the first time, and a few hours again a week or two or three later. But just to remember how to be around a campfire and to be around each other. Good friends who can understand the conversation and the worthwhile in sharing in conversation around a fire. And talk about the law, and talk about the history, and talk about how we all are, and talk about the feelings of it, and talk about what kind of world we'd like to live in and what kind of way we'd like to be living. And people get to know each other, and the little group of people invites other friends along, and it's not like free parties, and it's not like an invasion of a place. It's a long-term thing. It's starting to live on our land again. You don't have to give up your flat, you don't have to give up your job. Just start to visit your sacred site, your fairy place. Start to be in that place, even if it's just an hour a week to start with. Or one night a month to start with. You and a few friends in a place being sacred together, drinking tea and having a smoke, having a drink, whatever it is. But being sacred, actually communicating with each other with respect, actually listening to each other. 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, 50 people. The idea grows over time if the idea has any reality to it, if it is actually fun. If you do like hanging out with your mates, if you can manage to hang out with them without all fighting. If you learn from each other, learn how to cut wood, learn how to tend a fire, learn how to cook in a fire without burning everything, learn how to do the washing up without necessarily having much water. All them things. In that way, a movement, so to speak, would spread in an anarchic fashion all over the country, wherever. It doesn't have to be aligned with anyone else. The only thing you're sharing is your awareness. You don't have to join a group or anything else. It's just having that old thing of having a sacred places and people being able to be in those sacred places and be living in a sacred manner. That's all it is. But it would get a real grassroots of people together. It would be people empowering each other to do whatever they feel like doing, given the revelations of information that the internet is helping us to have. It's not going to the big place that's advertised on the internet and all getting photographed by the police and getting into strife with the police. It's a few people heading off to a place like just going around to a friend's house, but you're going out to a piece of nature. And you're hanging out together, and you're playing music, and you're doing whatever, and you're chatting. And when fracking comes to your area, then you've already got a group. You're not going to get infiltrated by professional protesters, are you? Now, the stuff to figure out about the land is it's our land. But that's not a possessive thing. It's just we're living on it. And the land welcomes us as natural people. And if we're living on the land as persons, we're all supporting a system that's destroying the whole earth. That's destroying creation. If we're all supporting that system, then we're not really good people anymore in consciousness. But if the nature of the people is actually a good nature, and I think it is, if people can communicate to each other and actually share and be good with each other, which I think we can, then we already hold the whole land. We've just been believing the lies of the legalese laws. The legalese laws have been making us live against natural law, and that's been destroying the earth. So that's where we have a problem that we need to overcome. Overthrowing the government is one thing. I can't do that. I don't know how to do that necessarily at all. I don't know what I would replace it with if it was going to get overthrown. But I do know that the natural order that was there before the artificial system, that natural order still works. The earth lives. We didn't create our own lives. We don't create our living. Life is a gift. And if we're to protect life, we have to be gifted. And that's to do with living in the moment rather than living in the past or in fear of the future. So there's the simple idea I'm saying anyway is, and what we're going to do around my local area, I suppose, if the idea takes root, but it's what I to be living with already anyway, is learning how to live in a sacred manner by living around a sacred fire. And keeping that in mind as an intent. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks very much. Get in touch. Get in touch. Oh no, I was going to show you around the garden. Let me show you around the garden. Because it's very different to what it was a couple of weeks ago. Here we go. So, okay. Here's the double digging pathway. This has pretty much got all the weeds out of it. This has still got root systems. Here it is, and there's the edge. And so it's a big enough space, and I've just made a bit on the inside. Yeah, we're looking into it.